Welcome again, everyone, to another edition of First Person, as always sponsored by the Precision Strip Company in Minster, Ohio. Generations of service and support for the people and the companies and activities in that Auglaize County community. We couldn't appreciate them more for their support of us here on PressProsMagazine.com and specifically for First Person. Baseball. And the guy to my right knows something about it. We talk about it all the time, Hal Mccoy, and sometimes we agree, sometimes not, or sometimes we just agree to disagree.
That's what baseball is all about.
But it's always fun, and I thought with the announcement of the resumption of the Major League schedule, such as it is, coming up here on July 24th, just 3 weeks away, we'd sit down and talk a little bit about that. And I guess first and foremost, you and I have talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, about what you expect out of the restart and what you expect Major League Baseball to be, considering the NASCAR sprint to the finish and the World Series. What are your expectations?
Well, number one, they're not going to play 60 games, and we all know baseball is a marathon and not a sprint. Yeah. And this is going to be a sprint. You're going to have a good start, a good middle, and a good end. You can't have any long slumps. A team like the Washington Nationals that started 15-31 last year, won the World Series. They start 15-31 this year. They aren't even going to make the playoffs. So it's going to be a whole lot different type of baseball. No fans. That's going to be interesting to see how that affects the players playing in studio silence. Changing a few of the rules, putting a runner on second base in the 10th inning with a tie game, which I abhor. They just totally bastardized the game in these days. Adding the DH to the National League, I've been an opponent of the DH ever since it came out in 1973, and now it's finally hit the National League, and you know it's going to be
here for good.
It's going to be here for good, right?
Be here for good. You've been around for every work stoppage during your tenure with the Reds. This time feels different to me. They've somehow wheedled their way back into the hearts and minds of fans all the other times. I'm not so sure about this time, because now, as you just talked about, they're tinkering with the strategy, they're tinkering with the rules, they're tinkering with the timing of the game, and they're not even going to get to go watch the game in person. Will they win people back?
Well, after the 1994 strike, you said that they were able to wheedle their back in. I've talked to a lot of people who haven't attended a baseball game since. They might catch a game or two on TV, but they tell me that the 94 strike, when they wiped out the World Series, was the end of it for them. But then we had the Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire steroid home run affair that brought fans back in bunches. That helped get them back, and of course we found out they were cheating to do it. So, but now we have this where you had two entities of billionaires and millionaires squabbling over money. Baseball could have come back 4 months ago. They had these so-called negotiations, and it ended up they didn't accomplish a thing. They're right back where they were at square one. So they wasted 3 or 4 months when they could have won the hearts of the fans. They could have been the only professional sport out there. They could have had a great TV ratings. Instead, they've just further alienated the fans. And I think you're right. It's going to be a killer. Even though they're coming back and playing now, they've alienated so many fans with their absurd negotiations and fights over money that I think that they're going to lose a whole lot of fans.
You know, I said this to somebody the other day, asking me, "Do you what you just talked about there?" And I said, "I don't think they're a niche sport anymore, like football, hockey, the others. You can make a case for niche, almost cult followings for some of the other sports. Not for baseball. It's become expensive. It's become, obviously, as you described, arrogant. Yeah. It's in some cases hard to get. You can't go to the games. Baseball's got a lot ahead of it.
Even before this, baseball was losing ground fast to the NFL, to college basketball, to the NBA,
Yep.
and to soccer. I mean, soccer is making a huge step forward, and even last year in Cincinnati, there were nights when FC Cincinnati played and the Reds played at home, and FC Cincinnati outdrew the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's they call it the national pastime, but I think they're right. It's the national
Time. And Hal, from my own experience in covering college baseball, I'm going to tell you, college Division I baseball is good, and it's going to put a hurt on minor league baseball here in the next 3, 4, 5 years. They're already cutting teams out of the minor league system.
Well, they've already cut out the minor league season entirely this year. That's going to hurt 160 teams and cities that are not playing. A team like the Dayton Dragons not playing, that hurts that downtown core area from Dayton. It's just another example of baseball shooting itself in both feet.
Hal Mccoy, our guest this week on First Person, sponsored as always, as we mentioned, by the Precision Strip Company in Minster, Ohio. Hal, I can't have you here without talking about Reds. People want to know, okay, 60 games, sprint to the finish. How about the Reds? How good could the Reds? They're talking about them on MLB as a team that made more moves than anybody else in the off season. Specifically, could be built just for this scenario.
Absolutely. They were going to be a contender over a 162 game season. But over a 60 game season, the way they are built, you're absolutely right. They could win this thing. At least they could get into playoffs and do a whole lot of damage. And I think the starting pitching is very solid. And what they've added, a field, makes them even that much stronger. The key thing, I think, in a 60-game season, where they're only going to have like 3 weeks of spring training, is going to be the bullpen. How good the bullpen is going to determine a lot for many of the teams. And the only thing about a 60-game season is a bad team can get hot and win. Mm-hmm. So you're liable to see a couple of surprising teams that make the playoffs this year.
You know, we're sitting here very close to the man cave. I'm sure somebody's wondering, hey, that looks pretty good. Thanks to Nadine.
Yeah, this is not the man cave.
This is not the man cave. Talking about the Reds, here's another issue, and we have talked about this to me recently this week. A couple family members have said, how relevant are the Reds if they don't win? It's now been 31 years since they were in the World Series. When I grew up, I thought 21 years was a long time, from 1940 to 1961. How relevant will the Reds need? They've got to win, I think, to stay relevant in Cincinnati and certainly in Major League Baseball.
I think that's what management finally realized after finishing last 5 years in a row, and then next to last year, that the fans were going away fast. To be relevant, they had to have a winning team on the field. That's what it's all about. You can give away all the bobbleheads and all the trinkets you want. They're not going to come unless you win. If you win, they will come, and that is very important for the Reds. It's almost like my Cleveland Indians, who haven't won a World Series since 1948. So to be relevant, you have to win, and it is definitely something the Reds have to do to draw the fans back.
Paul Doherty told me one time, bad Major League sports is better than no Major League sports at all, but I'm not so sure. He was talking about the Bengals then.
Right.
I'm not so sure that's going to carry the Reds.
No, I think you're right. As I just talked about, the fan base has been going away in droves, and you hear nothing but negativity when you're talking about the Reds, and that's a bad thing to have the negative connotations attached to your name. You know, when you go back to the Big Red Machine, it was all about positive and how great they are. Nowadays, it's all negative and how bad they've been.
Pride of the Tri-State.
Yes. Yes.
Before I get away, I want to talk to you about your work with us a couple weeks ago up in Newton in the Summer Invite High School Tournament. A chance for those kids to have a fulfillment of at least their high school season, which was canceled to the OHSAA. I know you had fun. A lot of people have commented about how great it was to have you there writing about kids learning to play the game.
Yeah, that's grassroots baseball. I've said that all along. I've covered the state high school tournament for you 3 or 4 times, and getting away from Major League Baseball and all the egos and the big money to watch those kids out there playing because they love it. It's very special, and I really enjoy it.
core member right here of PressProsMagazine.com, class of 2002, Hall of Fame, went in with Euchre. Who had the better acceptance speech?
He did, of course. Although I've had a lot of people compliment me on my speech, but they had a meeting, ESPN had a meeting Saturday before the Sunday ceremony, and they said, Bob Euchre, you're going to go first on the speeches, and I went, time out, time out. If you make Euchre go first, and I have to follow that act, I'm going to stand up and say, I agree with everything he just said. So fortunately, they let me go first, and I had him crying, and then Euchre had him in the aisles with one of the funniest speeches you'll ever hear.
Hall of Famer Hal Mccoy, this week's guest on First Person. This wraps up this edition, again sponsored by our friends at Precision Strip in Minster, Ohio. Great support for everything, for the activities and the people in the schools and the kids in those communities, and we couldn't thank them more for their support for us here on Press Pros. Until next time, for Hal and our friends at Precision Strip, thank you for the support and your loyalty with us at PressProsMagazine.com. Everything that we do, including the next edition of First Person, coming up in about a week here on Press Pros Magazine. Have a great weekend and a 4th of July to everybody. Be safe.